Hello, anatomy colleagues. This is Dr. Alsup, and in this video, we will be focusing on bone formation and growth. And this is a bit more complicated of a topic. We're going to focus on the big picture, so we're not going to really get into the nitty-gritty details, and that's what we will need for assessment. All right, so there are three learning objectives to read here and try to answer through our upcoming discussion. So try to answer these in your own words at the end of the lecture, and if you can do so, you are in an excellent place. And we will start by defining ossification, which is simply put, the process by which bone forms. And this is different from the term calcification. Takes me a little while to write that with the pen. So calcification is often used interchangeably with ossification, albeit this is incorrect. So calcification simply means tissue hardening. So as a bone is a relatively hard connective tissue, calcification is an important process within ossification. But ossification is more complex than just calcification. And ossification occurs in four main situations, including initial growth, which is what we will discuss in more detail here, growth of bone. We will introduce some concepts here and in other videos as well. Remodeling of bone. So bone is a dynamic structure and it changes throughout your life. And lastly, bone can form in fracture repair, and we will discuss these last two in a separate video. Initial bone formation begins with the formation of an embryonic skeleton composed of mesenchyme. And mesenchyme is a very important and prominent embryonic tissue that almost all connective tissues are derived from. And since bone is a type of connective tissue, it's included here. And the initial formation of the mesenchymal skeleton begins around the 6th week in utero. And from there, ossification follows one of two patterns, both of which involve replacement of a pre-existing connective tissue with bone. And these include intramembranous and endochondral ossification. So let's get into a bit more detail of both. Starting with the simpler of the two, intramembranous ossification. And with this ossification pattern, the bone will form directly within the mesenchymal or connective tissue model, meaning bone will directly replace that tissue. Now, for this course, we are not going to get into the details of each step, but you can see the general pattern of these steps here on the right. A minority of bones form through intramembranous ossification, and these include the flat bones of the skull, as well as the associated fontanelles. And fontanelles are located between certain bones of the cranium. They're often referred to as soft spots. And these are important in allowing the relatively large skull to exit the relatively small birth canal, in addition to facilitating rapid growth of the brain. Other bones are going to form through intramembranous ossification. These include most of the facial bones, as well as the mandible or that lower jaw. And then lastly, you're going to have that medial part of the clavicle. So the clavicle is unique in the fact that a portion of it is going to form through intramembranous and the other portion through endochondral. So a relatively few bones form initially through this ossification process, but likely the most important role of intramembranous ossification is lifelong thickening, strengthening, and remodeling of all bones. So it is the method for depositing new tissue on the bone's surface, even past the age where bones can grow in length. So when they've stopped growing in length, you can still have remodeling. Moving to endochondral ossification, this is the more complex ossification process of the pair. And this is because there is a very important middle step, which includes the formation of a hyaline cartilage model. And so it is the hyaline cartilage that will replace the mesenchyme, forming that cartilage model. The cartilage model will grow in both length and width, and it is the cartilage model that will be eventually replaced by bone. And bone will replace cartilage first on the diaphyseal region, but cartilage will persist in the metaphyseal region as an epiphyseal plate, which is important in bone length growth until early adulthood, when bone fully replaces the cartilage in that region. And that bone is not capable of bone length growth anymore, but importantly, it can still grow in width and remodel throughout life. There is going to be a small remnant of hyaline cartilage that persists into adulthood on the ends of the bone, and this is called articular cartilage. Most bones of the body will form through endochondral ossification. So any bone not previously described with intramembranous ossification. So this would include all the long bones, most of the bones of the axial skeleton. I want to move to two terms that describe how and where bone growth can occur. And we're going to start with interstitial growth, which simply means growth from within or endogenous growth. And this type of growth occurs specifically in that cartilage model. So where those epiphyseal plates occur in the metaphyseal region, it is here that we have increases in bone length. But bone elongation is really the result of cartilage growth first. So that cartilage is growing from within, and the cartilage model will grow and be replaced by bone little by little on the diaphyseal side of the epiphyseal plate. Eventually, you will have the complete replacement of cartilage with bone, and bone will not be capable of bone length growth. So you will not have that interstitial growth. Appositional growth is growth from the outer surface or exogenous growth. And this type of growth or deposition of new tissue occurs on the outer surface of bone or that cartilage model. So an important distinction is that cartilage can enlarge by both interstitial and appositional growth. But in bone, osteocytes are embedded within that calcified extracellular matrix. So there's little room to deposit matrix internally. So bone growth only can occur through appositional growth. So osteoblasts in the internal layer of the periosteum, they're going to deposit tissue on the bone surface. It will calcify, and osteoclasts will initiate remodeling of the medullary cavity and surrounding areas to have correctly sized and shaped bone. So a bit of an intro into bone remodeling, which we will discuss in more detail in an upcoming lecture. All right, let's do a quick practice question focused on which bones initially form through ossification processes. So the question is, the occipital bone of the skull, which is located posterior on the back of the skull, forms via which type of ossification process? Take a moment, pause if needed, and then when you're ready, let's discuss how B, or intramembranous ossification, is the correct answer. Now, it is true that a minority of bones initially form through intramembranous ossification, but those do include those flat bones of the skull, and the occipital bone is one of those bones. Other bones that form through intramembranous ossification include most of the facial bones, the mandible, that medial part of the clavicle. All other bones form through endochondral ossification. So if I had said the rib forms through which type of ossification process, or say the humerus of the arm, that correct answer would have been A, endochondral ossification. All right, excellent. Please take time to answer those learning objectives we had at the beginning of the video in your own words based on our discussion. Make sure you understand those concepts before moving to the next video. I thank you so much for your time and attention.